They said loyalty was everything, until it wasn't. You remember the night clearly. The air was still, almost holy, before it turned poisonous. Words became knives. Smiles became traps. The people who once clapped for you now whispered in corners, feeding off your silence. You stood there blind with trust, thinking love would shield you. But love was the blade they hid behind their back. You didn't lose a battle that night. You were sacrificed, offered up to the gods of betrayal so the weak could feel powerful for a moment. And when they walked away, laughing, you didn't chase. You just stood there, watching your old world burn, realizing no one dies faster than the man who believes loyalty is permanent. You learned what truth sounds like when it's breaking. It's not a scream. It's the sound of footsteps fading, slow, deliberate, final. Every voice you once depended on vanished. Every face you trusted blurred into the fog. The silence after betrayal is the kind that hums, a vibration deep inside your chest, where your innocence used to live. You started to question if you were the villain, if your kindness made you knave, if your ambition made you disposable. But underneath the confusion, something darker stirred, the kind of stillness that only comes when the world stops pretending to care. You walked home that night with nothing but the taste of metal in your mouth, anger disguised as clarity. You didn't cry. You didn't speak. You just stared at your reflection in every dark window, realizing the person looking back wasn't the same. They didn't destroy you. They stripped you down to something primal. You felt your chest tighten, not from pain, but from awakening. For the first time, you saw how fragile trust really is, how power vanishes the moment you hand it to someone else. You understood that survival isn't about strength. It's about remembering who you were before the applause, before the validation, before you let others define your worth. In that moment, something inside you shifted. The world stopped feeling like a home and started feeling like a test. Every memory turned into data, every betrayal a lesson in camouflage. You began to see patterns, how people love when you're small, but fear you when you rise. How they feed you comfort until you forget you were meant for conquest. You stood there under a dying streetlight, staring at the cracks on the pavement, realizing they were just reflections of your own. You smiled, not with joy, but with understanding. Because the truth finally revealed itself. No one betrays you without first revealing who they truly are. And maybe, just maybe, that was the gift hidden inside the pain. The death of trust was the birth of strategy. The night they left you for dead was the night you stopped needing anyone to save you. They left and the silence stayed. At first, you thought the silence was mercy, space to breathe, time to heal. But it wasn't, it was judgment, the kind that echoes louder than any voice. Every room you entered felt like an empty cathedral, haunted by the sound of your own footsteps. You stopped answering calls not because you didn't care, but because you finally saw what was behind every smile, a transaction. Every promise, a performance. You weren't abandoned by people. You were abandoned by illusion. You started noticing details that never mattered before. The way the light hit the cracks in the wall, the smell of dust after midnight, the hum of the refrigerator when everything else was asleep. Time moved differently down here, slow, cruel, deliberate. You weren't living days anymore. You were counting heartbeats between disappointments. Every night felt longer than the one before, and every morning demanded a version of you that had already died. You told yourself this was temporary, but deep down you knew something had been severed. There's a moment when pain stops screaming and starts whispering. When it no longer begs to be felt, but instead begins to shape you. That's where you lived, in that quiet corrosion. You watched yourself from the outside, the slumped posture, the hollow stare, the body moving without permission. You wondered how many versions of you had already died before this one. You stopped trying to fix it. You stopped trying to be who you were, because that person couldn't survive what you saw. They called it failure. You called it revelation. You learned that loyalty without reciprocation is slavery, that kindness in the wrong hands is ammunition, and that love, the kind that expects nothing, will always be fed to wolves. You learned that the world doesn't care about your good intentions, your soft heart, or the poetry bleeding from your wounds. It only respects power, the kind you can't fake, the kind born from losing everything and still standing, nights bled into weeks. The phone stayed silent. But something began shifting inside you. Quietly, methodically, like a soldier sharpening a blade underground, you stopped checking who watched your stories. You stopped wishing they'd text. You started studying their silence like scripture. It became your new teacher. Every unanswered call was a verse in a language only the broken understand. You didn't rise. You descended deeper into yourself, into the place no one else could reach. And somewhere between the isolation and the insomnia, a terrifying thought took root. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was the dark corridor before the throne room, the storm before the silence. You realized the fall wasn't punishment, it was purification. They buried you. But they forgot one thing about seeds. They grow underground, in the dark, where no one claps. You stare into the mirror long enough to realize it's not showing your reflection anymore, it's showing your consequences. Every betrayal, every silence, every moment you beg to be seen now stares back as something cold and merciless. You used to flinch at your own eyes. Now they don't blink. The mirror doesn't lie. It remembers. It remembers the nights you kept replaying what they said, how they laughed when you fell, how they replaced you without hesitation. You thought they broke you, but in truth you broke yourself by believing they ever cared. The betrayal wasn't in what they did, it was in what you allowed. You traced the outline of your own face as if trying to find the version of yourself that still believed in fairness. But that person's gone. You buried them beneath too many second chances. You've learned that mercy without boundaries is self-destruction disguised as kindness. The mirror forces you to admit it. You wanted to be loved more than respected. You begged for peace from people who fed on your silence. You called it loyalty. They called it weakness. The realization doesn't sting anymore. It cauterizes. You can almost feel the burn spreading behind your ribs as the truth finally roots itself there. The person who once needed their approval is gone. The one who's left doesn't speak in apologies anymore. The air feels heavier now, but not from sadness, from awakening. You remember every promise you made to yourself and broke. Every day you said you'd change, but didn't. Every mask you wore to fit into rooms that were already plotting your absence. The mirror doesn't pity you, it demands payment, and you pay it with truth. You whisper, "No one is coming," and the reflection nods. That's the deal. No savior, no applause. No redemption arc, just you standing before the wreckage deciding whether to stay broken or rebuild with your bare hands. You realize power isn't something given. It's taken in silence when no one's watching. It's born when the world forgets your name, and you learn to say it again without flinching. You watch the light shift on your skin. The same face, but something in the eyes has changed. Colder, sharper, quieter. You feel it. The transformation isn't loud. It's methodical, surgical. It's not vengeance. It's reclamation. The mirror no longer mocks you. It warns the world. You are no longer the person who waited. You are the one who moves in stillness, who plans in shadows, who builds without broadcasting. You have turned your pain into a compass, your loneliness into armor, and somewhere deep inside, you realize what they should have feared all along. Not your anger, not your suffering, but your silence. Because silence, once mastered, is the sound of power sharpening its edge. They forgot you existed, and that was their mistake. The silence they left you and became your weapon. While they were busy showing off their temporary victories, you were bleeding in private, quietly, methodically, without an audience. Every sunrise felt like judgment, every mirror a reminder that the weak version of you had to die if you ever wanted to live again. You stopped asking, "Why me?" and started whispering, "Try me." Because something ancient was waking inside you, something that no betrayal could touch. You realized pain isn't punishment, it's initiation. The universe wasn't cruel, it was testing how badly you wanted to become unbreakable. You built in shadows while they laughed in daylight. Mornings bled into nights, you stopped keeping track. Sleep became irrelevant, comfort became sin. You started feeding on the very things that used to scare you, the silence, the loneliness, the doubt. Each repetition, each scar, each small victory sharpened you into something they could no longer recognize. You weren't chasing approval anymore, you were forging identity. There's a moment in every exile where suffering turns from torment to fuel. And when that moment hit, you didn't look back. You realize no one respects the broken until the broken becomes dangerous. You became a student of pain. You studied your own downfall like scripture. Every betrayal, every rejection. Every humiliation became data, proof that softness had a cost. You learned to speak the language of discipline, where sacrifice isn't noble, it's required. You stopped craving applause and started craving control. The grind was no longer about proving anyone wrong, it was about proving that silence and obsession are deadlier than noise. You understood what they never will: comfort kills potential faster than failure ever could. While they feared suffering, you turned it into art. While they sought shortcuts, you built an empire brick by brick in the dark. You stopped being the person who waited. Now you hunt. You walk into rooms like a storm disguised as calm. There's no anger left, only purpose. The grind stripped away everything fragile until all that remained was precision. They wouldn't understand this version of you, because this version doesn't speak in words. It speaks in consistency, in scars, in quiet victories that echo louder than applause ever could. You didn't rebuild to return, you rebuilt to transcend, to stand above what destroyed you and smile, not out of revenge but realization. Because the truth you learned is brutal and sacred, the ones who suffer without witnesses become the most dangerous. And now your silence is the loudest thing in the room. They thought you were gone, that the silence meant surrender, that the years you vanished were spent licking wounds and writing apologies to ghosts. But the truth was darker. You were underground, building something they couldn't measure, because it wasn't muscle or money, it was will. The kind forged when every door is slammed and every name you trusted turns to smoke. You stopped screaming, you started sharpening. Each sleepless night became a whetstone. Each humiliation, a hammer. You weren't healing, you were hardening. There was a moment when you realized the world doesn't reward purity, it rewards precision. Mercy had cost you everything, so you buried it. You stopped explaining yourself to people who secretly wanted you small. You burned every excuse and called the ashes discipline. You stopped waiting for fairness and learned how to bend reality through sheer endurance. Your revenge was no longer about them. It was about evolution. You weren't rising from the ashes. You became the fire that created them. They used to say you'd lost yourself. They were right. The naive version of you, the one that believed loyalty was love, died quietly, and you never buried them. You left the body there as a reminder. Every time weakness whispered, you remembered that corpse. You remembered how it felt to beg, to hope, to need. You tore that version out and built something else in its place. Not human, not monster. Something between, an instrument of survival sculpted by betrayal. The kind that doesn't flinch when the knife comes, because it's already learned to cut back. Now, your silence speaks louder than their laughter ever did. You don't argue. You don't chase. You move with the certainty of someone who has seen death in the eyes of their own reflection and didn't look away. You wake up before guilt can catch you. You train before doubt can breathe. You build before fear remembers your name. What once broke you now fuels you. Every scar became circuitry, rewired for dominance. You no longer crave applause. You crave precision. Because you know power isn't loud, it's surgical. It doesn't shout, it calculates. They thought you'd fade quietly into the background of your own failure, but your absence was your greatest disguise. You let the noise eat itself while you studied the silence. You learned that storms aren't announced, they arrive. You became that storm, cold, focused, relentless. And when they finally see you again, they won't recognize you, because the fire doesn't remember the ones who tried to smother it. It only remembers how good it felt to burn. They never saw it coming. You were gone long enough for them to believe the story they told about you. The one where you never recovered, never fought back, never mattered again. They laughed over it, passed it around like a rumor that aged well. But rumors die when the truth arrives. And the truth is walking back through the door in silence. Not with noise, not with apologies, but with presence. The kind that freezes a room without words. The kind that says you shouldn't have underestimated the quiet one. You didn't come back for revenge. You came back because you became someone else while they slept on your name. You built yourself in places no one dared to look. Under pressure, under failure, under silence. You forged a calm that could command storms. You learned that power doesn't announce itself, it hums beneath the skin. Like a secret voltage only you can feel. When they see you now, they'll pretend they aren't shocked, but they'll feel it. That slow panic of realizing you survived everything they prayed would bury you. There's a shift in your eyes now. Once soft, now still. the kind of stillness that makes people talk slower around you as if afraid to disturb something sacred. You speak less, but every word cuts through the air like a blade that's been waiting years to taste its target. You don't raise your voice anymore. The silence around you does the talking. It tells the story of the nights no one remembers. The grind, the hunger, the humiliation turned ritual. You used to chase validation. Now you move like someone who could destroy it. They wanted you gone so they could feel taller. But you let them win. You stepped back, disappeared, gave them the illusion of victory. Because real strategy isn't about striking first. It's about letting arrogance build its own gallows. And when it finally collapses, all you have to do is stand where the light hits. You didn't steal their spotlight. You became the sun. The same people who mocked your silence now hide behind noise. They crave the chaos you outgrew. Success didn't taste sweet. It tasted inevitable. You didn't need to prove anything. You just became proof. Every move is deliberate now. Every glance calculated. You've turned emotion into weaponry, pain into precision. They can't touch you because you no longer exist in the same realm of need. They still want to be seen. You've become the one they can't stop seeing. That's the quiet cruelty of ascension. You stopped chasing the throne, and it started orbiting you. And when they finally whisper your name again, it won't be with laughter, it will be with awe. Because deep down, they'll know the truth you let them win for 5 long years, just so their fall would echo forever. They never saw it happen, the shift. It wasn't a scream or a war or a headline. It was a quiet kind of death, the kind that takes years to complete. You buried the weaker version of yourself without ceremony, no tears, no eulogy. Just silence so heavy it pressed against the walls of your mind until even your heartbeat started to sound like strategy. Once their words had weight. Once their laughter burned through your chest like acid. But now, their voices echo off armor and you feel nothing. That's the first sign of evolution. When noise becomes data and pain becomes design. You walk through the same world, but it no longer feels the same. The streets are familiar, yet you move differently. Measured, deliberate, detached. You no longer chase, you draw. You no longer explain, you let the void do it for you. There's an aura that follows you now, something unspoken but undeniable. People can feel it before they see you. They sense the difference between someone pretending to be unbothered and someone who truly is. You're not angry anymore. Anger is loud, and you've learned that real power whispers, the kind that doesn't announce itself. It arrives like a shadow right before the storm. The crown didn't appear overnight. It was forged in exile. Every sleepless night, every betrayal replayed in your mind, every tear that dried before anyone could see, it all melted down into steel. You wore humility when they mocked you, discipline when they doubted you, and silence when they demanded noise. And when they finally turned away, thinking the story had ended, that's when your story began. You didn't rise to prove them wrong. You rose to prove you were never like them. They were driven by ego. You were driven by purpose. And now the distance between the two is infinite. You don't crave revenge anymore. Revenge requires recognition, and you no longer need their eyes on you. The satisfaction comes from knowing they still talk about you in low voices, wondering how you did it, when you did it, and why you never looked back. They mistake your silence for arrogance. They don't realize it's mercy, because if they knew what you became in the dark, they'd pray you never remember their name. You learned the ancient truth, that kings don't shout across the battlefield. They let gravity pull the weak into orbit. You became gravity. Now you stand where it's quiet, above the noise, beyond the reach of explanation. Your crown is invisible, but everyone feels its weight when you enter the room. The same silence that once drowned you now guards you. You speak less, but when you do, the world stops pretending not to hear. They'll say you changed. They'll say you became cold. But you'll know the truth. You became untouchable. Because you let them win long enough for their fall to echo your name. And when the world asks how you did it, you'll simply smile. Because real power never tells its story. It just exists.